Good afternoon and welcome to St. Luke's Good Friday service. Please do settle yourself as we ask ourselves the question, were you there when they crucified our Lord?
Yes, I was there. Jesus and I were close friends, and I was there the whole time. At the Passover meal, we sat next to each other, and I received from him the bread and wine. This is my body, he said, and this is my blood. Beautiful words, and I realized what they meant. I listened with disbelief and dismay when Jesus said one of us would betray him. And when he said, "Tonight you will all desert me," I just couldn't believe him. We were his close followers. We loved him. We wouldn't desert him. When we came to the Garden of Gethsemane afterwards, Jesus chose me, along with Peter and my brother James, to go with him further into the garden, where he prayed to God. I'm ashamed to say that I fell asleep like the other two. Not just once, but 3 times. Jesus' words, "Couldn't you stay awake with me for 1 hour?" have haunted me. It's as if they are burned into my heart.
I was there, though there are some parts I'd like to forget, like my rash words. Maybe the others will desert you, Lord, but not me. I said that very confidently. And when Jesus turned to me and said, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times," I was shocked and hurt. Why would he say a thing like that? In the Garden of Gethsemane, I was all zeal and bravado. I felt like I could protect Jesus from the crowd that showed up among the olive trees. I thought I was being brave when I cut off the ear of the priest's servant with my sword, but really it was a stupid, impulsive thing to do. But more than anything, it's my denial of Jesus that haunts me. There, at the courtyard fire, I couldn't even admit to the maid, "Yes, I know Jesus. He's my friend. I'm his follower." Instead, I said, No, I don't know the man. Why couldn't I have had the guts to say I was with him? Why couldn't I stand up for Jesus when he was facing the jeering crowd, the interrogation? Now I know how people feel when they wish they could go back and live some part of their lives over again. I wish I could have another chance, do it better. At the end of the day, I was just looking out for number one. I was just a coward.
I was hoping you wouldn't ask. I was hoping that my betrayal would be something you wouldn't want to hear about. No, I didn't see Jesus crucified, but I was there, eating the Passover meal with Jesus, after I'd already agreed to betray him. I left the dinner early to join those with whom I was collaborating. Together we came to the Garden of Gethsemane. Me and the servant of the high priests and the elders, the police, a noisy mob with clubs and swords. The 30 silver coins the priests and elders had given me to do this were in my pocket. Now it was time for me to deliver. And I did. I delivered Jesus into their hands. We'd agreed that I'd identify him with a kiss. Afterwards, I bitterly regretted it. Couldn't even bring myself to spend a single coin. I don't know how I'll be able to live with the guilt of what I've done.
Let's take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself this: do I step aside from the way of Jesus by falling asleep on the job like John? Do I step aside from the way of Jesus by wanting to save my own skin, like Peter? Do I step aside from the way of Jesus by being motivated by money and power and not love, like Judas? Let us say together, Father, forgive me. Help me to change.
Of course I was there. It was my duty to do something about the man who was defying all our traditions and the authority of the temple. I was the one who told everyone, it's better that one man should die for the people. Though I realise that sometimes language is double-edged, and you might understand those words differently than I do. You see, I firmly believe that sometimes the end justifies the means, and sometimes you have to manipulate a mob to get a necessary thing done, even if it's not so pleasant. When we interrogated Jesus, he was not cooperative, and in my opinion, he was blasphemous, the sort of thing that can't be tolerated. I did my best to get credible witnesses whose stories would stand against him. That didn't work too well, so I appealed to the people's religious nationalism and their fear of the outsider. And Jesus was an outsider, all right. He was different to anyone I'd ever known. I worked their emotions up until they were shouting, as I hoped they would, "Crucify him!"
Yes, I was there. Not at the crucifixion exactly, but as far as I know, when I saw Jesus, he was already a doomed man. I always wanted to see him, this Jew whose birth scared one Herod so badly that he had scores of baby boys killed to get rid of a possible rival. Well, he failed. He didn't know that the real king was safe in Egypt. Jesus had attracted a following, and that interested me. I'd heard about the signs and wonders he performed, and the prospect of seeing him perform a miracle intrigued me. But he wouldn't perform, wouldn't answer my questions. A man in my position wants compliance, on the spot. The man did not comply. Well, as I said, he was doomed in any case. Was I being cynical, putting that royal velvet robe around his shoulders? I suppose so. And I didn't stop the soldiers from taunting and abusing him. Soldiers are a rough lot. They take their pleasure where they can. The crucifixion took place as scheduled, I hear. I didn't give it much further thought.
I wish I hadn't been there. Really, I wanted nothing to do with any of it. I realised right away this Jesus was not a criminal. He wasn't evil, and he certainly didn't deserve to die. Personally, I would have liked to let him go. My wife begged me not to get involved. I didn't care particularly what happened to him, but I really didn't want to be involved in such dirty politics. I wish the high priest and his gang could have handled it themselves, any way they wanted to, but they wanted nothing short of blood. I quickly understood that, and they needed my authority to do it officially. It was that threat, I guess, that persuaded me. If you don't do it, you won't be the emperor's friend any longer, they said. A psyched up crowd can exert unbelievable pressure. So you could say it was political expediency that made me hand Jesus over to be crucified. Who wants to lose a secure job? And yes, it's true that I said what is truth, said it cynically, I suppose. But I want to remind you that I tried to prevent his death. When they asked me to set a prisoner free, like every year, in honour of the holy day, I was hoping they'd come to their senses and choose Jesus of Nazareth. I didn't think much of that baying mob of a crowd when they chose Barabbas. So, in the end, it was the rabble that decided it, you might say. And that bit about me washing my hands, if I told you I woke up night after night after the crucifixion, dreaming I was washing my hands to remove the blood, you'd understand the guilt and misery I've lived with. If I've learned anything from that whole unfortunate business, it's this. It's no use trying to weasel out of taking responsibility for your decisions. It doesn't work.
Let's take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself this: do I step aside from the way of Jesus by looking for an easy target to scapegoat, like Caiaphas? Or do I step aside from the way of Jesus by being dismissive of people I consider unimportant, like Herod. Or do I step aside from the way of Jesus by sitting on the fence, like Pilate? Let us say together, Father, forgive me and help me to change.
It was by chance that I was there. I saw this procession winding out of the city, and I knew it was probably another crucifixion. I saw a man struggling with his cross. I always thought it was going too far to make a condemned man carry his own cross. He's not going to make it, I thought to myself. And then, before I knew what was happening, someone was yelling at me, someone grabbed me, and someone else laid that wooden cross on my shoulders. And suddenly, I found myself carrying Jesus' cross for him. So I've had the experience of carrying a cross not meant for me. But thinking about it later, I believe that cross was meant for me, and I've become convinced, this may sound odd to you, that I was given an opportunity, a chance to do something gracious and good. I've never regretted it. It changed my life.
I was there. I was always there, it seemed. I was there at his birth, giving birth to him. I was there throughout his life, which ended far, far too soon. And yes, I was there when my son died. And I don't have the words to describe the pain. Maybe if you're a mother, you can imagine it. I loved him. I always will. I thought of that old man, Simeon, who was in the temple when Joseph and I first looked Jesus there with our offering. A sword will pierce your heart, the old man said. I didn't know what he meant, but I wondered. I was so happy and so proud of my son. One of the last things Jesus did was to tell his friend John to look after me. There is your mother, told John. And then he said to me, there is your son. He was always compassionate like that, always thinking about the other person. And so he died. And my heart is torn in two.
I was there, and for me it meant literally my life. When Pilate asked the crowd which of us two they wanted freed, me or Jesus, I naturally expected them to say Jesus, because he's better known than me. Everyone had heard about Jesus. Me, on the other hand, I'm a nobody, just a petty criminal. When they yelled my name, Barabbas, give us Barabbas, I was stunned. That day I walked away a free man, and Jesus was crucified for me.
They crucified me on the same day, right next to him. There was a third guy too. Him and me, we were the scum, you might say. We were criminals and we deserved to die. The other guy taunted Jesus, dared him to get us all down from the cross. If you are the Messiah, why don't you save all three of us from death, he said. But I could tell Jesus was not like us. And as I hung there, dying in so much pain, it began to dawn on me. This man next to me was so different, so much more than me. And so I looked at him and said, think of me when you come into your kingdom. And he turned and looked at me and he said, truly I say, today you will be with me in paradise. And I knew then that although this moment was just so terrible, somehow it was going to be okay.
I was there at the crucifixion. I was in charge of the dirty work. But let me tell you something. When I heard his last words, when I saw the way he died, there was no doubt in my mind. This man was the Son of God. That's who we executed that day. The Son of God.
Let's take another moment to reflect. Ask yourself this: do I walk the way of Jesus, like Simon of Cyrene, by taking the weight of the cross and walking with Christ? Do I walk the way of Jesus like Mary, by loving him? Do I walk the way of Jesus like Barabbas, by knowing that my freedom was bought at a cost? Do I walk the way of Jesus like the thief, by trusting in him, no matter how hard the circumstances? Do I walk the way of Jesus like the centurion, by declaring with wonder that Jesus is Lord? So let us say together, Father, forgive me and help me to change.
Some would follow the procession when there was to be an execution. You may consider that morbid, cruel, but life was rough and we saw all of it. That day the crowd was large and restless, the procession long, and I'd heard that one of the condemned was that Jesus of Nazareth, the one they called the healer, the teacher. I wasn't surprised they were crucifying him. Our elders and priests didn't support him. I think they were jealous of him just because he attracted the crowds. He was especially popular with the sick and the poor. That sort were always hanging around him when he came to Jerusalem. As I watched him carry that heavy cross, I thought of all the burdens that I've borne. And let me tell you, I've borne plenty. Children who are wayward, not always able to find ways of earning enough to keep us fed. and always that feeling of not being good enough, of having failed. All those sacrifices I've carried to the temple, were they ever enough? Above Jesus' cross, I've read the words, King of the Jews. I don't know who put them there, but I thought it was a cruel irony. You don't crucify a king, you honour him. I stayed there a long while, watching. 6 or 7 times I decided I couldn't bear it any more, and I turned to go. But just as I began to leave, Jesus spoke. I couldn't always make out his words, but I remember when he said, Father, forgive them. They do not know what they're doing. I felt included in that prayer. I felt forgiven. The burdens I'd been carrying around seemed not quite so important. Maybe I could get free of them all, after all. As I stood, watching his cross, my eyes filled with tears and my heart overflowed with love and with gratitude. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced before or ever will again.
Thank you so much for joining us this Good Friday. We're going to end the service now with a blessing. God bless you and keep you and hold you in his hope and hold you in his peace and hold you in his unfailing love. And we look forward to seeing you again on Sunday. Amen.